meeting for April 15th, 2014. And I'll call to order, and let's start with a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. The first thing I'd like to do is adopt our agenda for this evening, so I'll entertain a motion to do that.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Carries. So that we have our agenda. Second order of business is to do approval of minutes for our last meeting, which is October 15th, 2013, because the January meeting was canceled due to snow emergencies, as a lot of things were canceled back in those days. So,
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries as well. Thank you. Very good. Next order of business is report of officers. I'm going to reserve my comments well, I'll just start a little bit and just say that on behalf of the committee, I've attended two meetings recently that had to do with the parks and open spaces. One is the Parks and Recreation Committee board meeting about the Clem-McCrone Master Plan, and I'll have some information about that later on in the meeting. And the second was last night. Thank you, Patty. The second was last night at the public meeting for the Radnor Greenways and Open Spaces Network. And there's some information that I'd like to pass on to that later on when we get to the laptop. Anything other than that, Jim, do you have any officer report that you'd like to make?
None.
Okay, thank you, Jim. All right, next is the reports of working groups. So we'll just go through there. We have a main part of our business is about the Clem-McCrone Master Plan and the Gateway, but we'll move on officially to our reports of working groups, and that starts with grants and funding. Nancy, do you have any report that you'd like to make about that?
I had prepared an annual fund report on grants and funding for the January meeting. Nothing's really changed, and I'll just keep it very simple. We have a small account that belongs to the Garrett Hill Community Enhancement Trust that's dedicated to improvements in Garrett Hill. Some of it is restricted to gateway signage, and the total that we have is $2,691. We hope to make use of that funding for improvements in Garrett Hill, specifically contributing to the gateway signage or to banners on the pole banners, or the two items for that. We may entertain the idea of raising more money for the gateway signs in the near future, just because they're very costly. Any questions?
I have none. How about you, Paul or Jerry? Jim? Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for preparing that report, for being good stewards of that money, and some of the exciting things that you're doing down at the park. We'll hear a little bit more about later, too. Next is the Gateways and the Conestoga Rock Slope Grant Update. We'll get to that when we talk a little bit about the Clem-McCrone Master Plan, so I'll reserve that later on in the meeting. Next is about park improvements. Jerry, other than what we want to talk about on the Clem-McCrone thing, is there anything you want to add to that? No. Okay, thank you. Streetscape and facade improvements, I'll handle that and just say that there has been some improvements on our streetscapes and facades. Appreciated that happening, and I think things are looking nice. I remember a comment made at a recent Board of Commissioners meeting by our Commissioner, John Fisher, who kind of also applauded the efforts that was happening and improvements on the facades and streetscape there, and suggested that some of that has been made possible because of the zoning that we were able to put through that enabled that to happen without any problems, because it did remove some restrictions that otherwise would have been there. So that is a nice legacy for what we've done, but of course it was all done through the initiative of the individual property owners, and we appreciate that as well. Do you have a comment, Nancy?
Back on park improvements, I think we meant to say that we have 3 signs to be installed, one that goes with the rain garden, one that goes with the stream bank buffer, and one that will go on the new comfort stations, if such is created. We weren't able to install them this winter due to weather and constraints on staff. But as soon as they're able, the Public Works will install the signs, and then we hope to have an event in the later spring, early summer that we'll celebrate.
That'd be great, Nancy, and it'd be good to get some publicity about that kind of celebration, because hopefully a lot of good things will be happening at the park, and that'd be a nice way to kind of celebrate another good event in there, too. So I hope your rain garden is getting a lot of good rain tonight. More than you want it to.
Yeah, more than it needs. It needs a little, has developed its own special way of dealing with overflow, so it needs a little work.
Okay. The next up is parking strategies, and I don't know that we have any particular report on that at this time, do we? Anyone? No? Okay. Next is consideration of the historic preservation and/or design criteria, and I think we kind of put that one to bed last time, so no new updates on that. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Brings us up to the next part of business, which is unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business, which is a talk. The main things would be about the Clemacrone Master Plan, the Gateway and Rock Slope Plan, and some minor things about the Radnor Greenways and Open Spaces Network as well. In order to do that, I'd like to go up to the laptop at the podium and bring up a couple of slides from the presentations that have been made in two of the recent meetings, both to the Park and Rec Committee or Board and also to a public meeting that was done last night. So I'm going to walk over to there and talk about that. Let's open this up. Great. Here we are. Okay, good. I know that many of you, I guess all of you, have actually been to some of the public meetings that have been held about this Clemacrone Master Plan and the gateways by Kim Oblegret that have been done at the Radnor United Methodist Church. So I know a lot of this may not be new information to you. It may be some new information to the people in the public who are watching this on TV, so that's part of why I'm going through some of this. I won't go through their entire presentation that they made to Parks and Rec, but I will give some of the highlights, and some of this is some of the final plans that perhaps maybe you didn't catch that first time, so we'll do that now. The first thing I should tell you that all these is on a PowerPoint presentation, and the notes from this meeting are up on the Radnor website. It is located underneath the Parks and Rec department, and you'll see that over in the left-hand column, there should be something about the Clemacrone Parking and Eastern Gateways Project Master Plan. If you did a search for that, you'd probably come up with it as well. So you can find the entire presentation there. This is from their presentation by Kim Oblegret on 410 to the Parks and Rec Committee. And I want to give you a couple of abbreviated high points about that. Let me just see if I can jump to some of these pages now. There we go. Let me think I want to go one up here. They made an interesting start-off point to talk about the mission of the project, which was to create a crowning jewel for the community. We certainly wanted to support that. Raise the bar for parks in Radnor, and create a legacy for Radnor Township. And I think these are all worthy goals for Clemacrone Park. I'm sure you agree. They did talk the next part about some of the steps that have been completed to date, and we'll just go through them briefly just to kind of remind ourselves what has been done. In January, at the very beginning of January, they visited the site and looked at the existing conditions of the park. They met with neighbors, they walked the park, they surveyed the park. This was they were able to do before the snow set in, so that was kind of fortunate. They were getting a good look at it before it got buried. In the middle of January, they met with the community group to understand their concerns and what we wanted to see in our park. They viewed this input as critical to the process. That was done, one of the first meetings that was done at the Radnor United Methodist Church. It was very well attended by community members. In the middle of, towards the end of February, they came back to the community group with a design concept solution and got a feedback to that. We're going to show the final output of that, where that ended up in a few moments. March 25th, they presented a revised design concept solution based on the group input that was done in February. So basically, they made two designs. Each have gone through their own kind of feedback loop, and now they've come up with a final design or a final draft design that they had presented to the Parks and Rec Board. And I'd like to bring that to you now. We're going through some of their earlier plans. This is the plan that exists at this point, and it's pretty much the same that it started with some minor revisions. So let me see if if my mouse can work here to get to the points. Okay, here we go. There we go. So this is the reference points here. The letters that's assigned over here tell you what they are. But just to orient you, this is Conestoga Road here, Rockingham Road over here. This is one of the main entrances over this and over here to the ball field, and the other to the park. And this is the Rockingham Road entrance over here. These are basically where the tennis courts and the basketball court are located at this point. However, they would be taken down and new structures would be done. So I think actually the basketball court here is actually where the bathroom is right now, to give you an orientation of where things are. So the first thing they did was they wanted to change the entry point to give a little better sense of entry. And here they've put a major entry point here at this point at the eastern edge of the Conestoga Road entrance, and another one over here to get closer to the ball field. One of the things that the American Legion wanted to do was to take that World War I memorial that was right in the middle, right close to the edge. Lost my mouse here. There we go, right about here, right close on the road, and to move that into place a little bit more prominence where people actually would see it, and it's a little bit further away from the road. So their design concept created a little bit of a spot up here where it says O and this little star. They would have a special grove for that, which would give it a little bit more prominence, more respect, and people would see it more readily as they entered the park from that entrance. So that seemed to be a good place to put that and to move that. As along the way, as they right now, you can imagine the tot lot goes right all the way up to the sidewalk here at this level. So they opened that up and created parking for 25 spaces. So that's over in this area right here. And so they extended that out because the tot lot they were going to push over in this area here as an activity area in this area marked C. So that gets pushed back from the road a bit, screened from with some trees. And as Tammy Cohen was mentioning at the Parks and Rec Board meeting, they intended to purchase and install all new equipment, not use the old stuff, but to actually put new equipment in there based on their findings. One of the things that obviously that started this process, at least in the community's mind, was to get updated facilities for bathrooms and whatnot, and that's going to be located right here where this pink shaded box is right here. That would be closer to the tot lots, closer to the entrance, a little closer to the street so it can be monitored and not be buried in the corner in the back that is right now. So that's where they wanted to put that. The ball field remains exactly where it was. So that was good that they were able to utilize that space and utilize the contours of the place as it is. One of the things that they were looking at was the grading of how all this gets put together, because when it rains, it gets kind of soggy in certain areas, and they wanted to be able to provide a little bit better drainage situation so that the field is a little bit more usable and does not get so soaked with water at that time. You may or may not be able to see it, but these blue curve lines here with arrows kind of show where they want the water to go. Apparently the high part here is right against the fence on the eastern side next to where they butts the properties. And so essentially when the water comes in, it goes from the east to the west down across the park that way. Jerry?
Quick question for you. On this diagram, it has where you showed that little red thing that you said was the restrooms.
Right.
That says that's a promenade. The restrooms are over where E is.
Boy, you got sharp eyes, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's a mistake in their drawing.
In their drawing.
In the drawing.
So that's where the restrooms are going to go.
Yeah.
Is where that promenade.
Excuse me. The red box has always been the restrooms. I think the last iteration of this plan had the restrooms right there where that E is.
Right.
They moved the restrooms at the last minute.
Okay.
But they didn't move the E. So, pardon? So
They didn't move the letter.
they didn't move the letter E. That's correct. So I believe that the last iteration was just that they moved this without moving the D. The D refers to the promenade, which is this going to be a wide 8 to 10 foot trail that goes through the park. And they called that the promenade. They really wanted to make it so that let's carry this through. That it starts here, and they're talking about it being 8 to 10 foot wide, to accommodate wheelchairs and other things. And also, this would be the roadway bed for trucks to come in for maintenance, trash, whatever. So it would be that kind of width to be able to handle that. And it would come down this way, past that other entrance, and slip along here to this other area where they've kind of designated in some respect to be kind of a mini amphitheater. Maybe it's got some kind of a stage with a cover on it, or it can be something minor or something major, whatever the budget would allow. But this could be some area where people would tend to gather. Maybe this is a focal point when they have their summer music specials that happen in the evenings there in June, July, August. That could be a focal point for that there. But in addition, it also goes straight back through this planned grove of trees. It takes you all the way to the back area and then loops around to get out again. Okay, you'll see here that this also connects to a smaller trailway here, which is not meant to be as heavily traveled and certainly not by trucks. But that would be how people could traverse across from one side of the field to the other, and as well as there's another trail along this way here too. So those would be smaller, and they're designated that way by the fact that they're, not as thick as these guys over here. All right. So that's how you would circulate pedestrians to the park. They've identified areas of where they wanted the rainwater to drain into this way here. So they had this open for a bunch of trees there to handle that, and also down here. So they're using that as kind of not quite a swale, but kind of a way to handle that, to move it down into the stream, which of course is going this way. The main event in the middle here, now they have two new tennis courts. The iteration prior to this had only shown one, but then they got feedback that they really wanted to put two back in again. So they would take away the two that are there now and replace it with two new ones at this point. The bathroom, I think, is right about here, and they would replace that with the new basketball court. And that opens up this space up here to handle a pavilion, and that could be used for any kind of summer activities that the township might have, or other activities that would be their community developed like that. These trees here are giving some kind of what we call berm, or a buffering between the neighbors and what might be happening there in the park too. As we move into the southern section of the park, now we ended up the area that they want to have some more active use area here. It could be another playground. It could be a number of things. They're not being specific, but it depends on the budget and what may happen. Some may happen now, some may happen later, but at least they have the opportunity to have it there. These dotted areas right here are where they kind of positioned 4th of July activities. For example, the moon bounces and those kind of things like that, they kind of penciled them in and say if you wanted to have them, you could have them there. Of course, part of the upgrade would be that they'd have the water and the electric in the right spots so they'd be able to handle these things for the known events that was going to happen. So that part's good. Down in this area down here, we see that the M area is a nature trail that goes across some of this wetlands area that are here now. I believe that a lot of this is pretty much inaccessible at this point. Is that right, Paul?
Exactly. It's area has a lot of invasives, a lot of overgrown plants that would need to be cleared. A thing to point out with these people that put the Kimmel Burgett Land Studies has done a great job on capturing the stormwater that's going to run off of this park into those swales that go around the basketball court and the tennis courts. And I think it's important to note they're going to put a considerable number of trees in, which the park needs, and they're going to be using native plants around these swales. So there'll be a lesser maintenance cost to the township for that. So it's a great partnership in the land studies in Kimmel Burgett.
Good. Thanks for bringing that up. I know you're the water expert over there, so I want to defer to you in all those matters.
Sure. No problem.
But and one of the things that the consultants, Kimmel Burgett and Land Studies, the folks there have emphasized is that whatever they plant there, they want it to be low maintenance. They do not want this to be something that has to take a lot of energy, costs or otherwise to do. So all the facilities that they put in there will have an eye towards being low-cost maintenance, and whatever happens, and if it does, then maybe they have to rethink it a little bit or come up with a different solution. So they want to make sure it's not a drain of money on a budget for this kind of a park. I think I've given the highlights to this. Of course, this is the entrance here. That would be a nice entrance with the grove of trees over there as well. They've taken all the activities into account that all the groups have met with them on, saying, here's what we need. I believe, as far as I know, from the responses of people at the community meetings that we've had, that everyone's been supportive of this plan and has been thankful that they have listened to them in a very well-mannered job and also have incorporated many of the needs and the wants and the wishes into this thing here. So that part is good. Nancy?
Yeah, I wanted to point out that the two yellow areas with C are the higher activity areas, and in the back of the park, that C is where we now have or will continue to have places to barbecue in that. I think you didn't mention that. Mm-hmm. And when you see this, like the dotted blue dots, and you see another one way at the end of the park, those are the areas that are the swales. So there's another one back that feed into the wetland. The existing wetland.
Okay.
So just to help people interpret the map a little bit.
No, that's great. I appreciate the backup information on it. Yeah.
The C is up front is the tot lot and maybe a water feature of some kind.
Yeah. So no, thank you for backing up on that
And
information.
I did want to say one other thing. I really appreciate the township giving resources to develop to get the experts in and help us develop the plan, because really they're worth the price paid. They really do contribute a lot to how you can reimagine the use of the park.
Right. I guess the last thing I'll bring up on this part here is designated L. That's called the wetland nature area there. So they actually have a plan. I think, Paul, you were kind of alluding to some of that, where they were going to expand that so that people could actually walk through that or see that and take note of that kind of a feature of the park, and not, rather than just being hidden right now.
Yeah, that area has the existing boardwalk, so they'll probably build their trail into that boardwalk and extend it through there. It's a wet area, so that's a good feature as well. Utilize that wetland to drain all that water off the park. Great idea.
Okay, great. Now, we just hit the highlights. I mean, they made an hour-long presentation on this, and we're not going to do that. I don't pretend to even attempt to do that, nor do I want to. But I will say that there's a lot of information and pictures about some examples of what they're talking about on this presentation. It's about a 15-page PowerPoint, and it's about a 30-page PowerPoint. So it has quite a bit of information about it, and I encourage people to go to the website to see it for themselves and come to the next two meetings that are going to be about this kind of thing. Let me move on to another section of this. Is there any questions or comments that people want to make about the drawing? Okay. Let me get down. Here's just some pictures that they have that talk about the different sections, what they may or may not look like, just to give some examples. Here, this is a page here that I thought was important. They kind of give some estimated costs, really $1.2 to $1.8 million to do everything that's there. Now, that may or may not happen, but I do want people to know, and people should know that Kimmel Bogrett Associates and Land Studies are working with the township right now for a DCNR, what they call a C2P2 grant. And the township is requesting $500,000 from DCNR, which would require a 50% match if awarded. The deadline for that is actually tomorrow, and they received approval from the Parks and Rec Board to go after that, to apply for that grant when they had their meeting on the 10th. They also asked for letters of support from community groups and others that would help go towards recommending this to the DCNR group folks. I put a letter in to support to Bob Sinkowski, talking from the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee perspective of how this fulfills the major points of our Garrett Hill Master Plan that was made several years ago. And of course, this is in an area of the township which is the most densely populated, so it would be a welcomed a resource for this area here too. Others, like the Garrett Hill Coalition and others, and the 4th of July Committee, have also put in letters of support, to my knowledge. And I think even the League of Women Voters have also put in letters of support. So they have some good support for it. They're optimistic that they can get this. Obviously, these are great plans, but all of it depends on having the money to go ahead and do it. There have been talk about doing some of this in phases. If you have a master plan, you're able to do that. we would like to see, obviously, as much be done in the first phase, in case phase 2 or 3 doesn't quite happen for a while. But if you have the opportunity to do it, and you have the money to do it, then that's it. So, that's where they're looking at to make this happen. So their next steps right now is to get a final direction on the park layout. That's important. If you want to go for a grant, you got to say, here's my final, what I want, and everybody's on board with it. They want to apply for the grant. The deadline is tomorrow, and they're on time to do that. By the way, Tammy Cohen, Steve Norsini, as well as Bob Sinkowski, have been instrumental in making that happen. I'm sure Kevin Kuchkansky has had a good input into that as well. So there's a lot of people at the staff at the township that are working very hard to make this a reality for the township and for Garrett Hill. The next physical thing that we would like people to support on, especially people from Garrett Hill, is April 28th coming up, where the Kimmel Grant will make a presentation to the Board of Commissioners about this plan. I'm sure they'll may modify this presentation, but have some version of this. Well, they will officially inform them of this. Of course, a number of the commissioners are on the Parks and Rec Board, so they are already fully aware of it. And so we'd like to have as many people as we could from the Garrett Hill area to come to that meeting to show their support for this park. And the next would be tentatively, at least the May 12th Board of Commissioners meeting, where they would have a meeting for the final master plan approval. That would be huge to go ahead and pushing this thing forward and to get something happening with it. If we get the money later on this year, that they can actually start to go ahead and make some hard plans for it. So we'd like support on the 28th of April and May 12th. Any questions on this part right now? No? Okay. Give a couple minutes on the Eastern Gateway. Update of that. That was part of the same master planning process, although its own separate project. This is a picture of the area right now. Conestoga Road to orient you coming in here. Here's Locust Grove Road. Here's where the tunnel is, where the road, Conestoga, goes underneath the tracks, and we can see that area there. This is, of course, a picture we're all familiar with, how that looks. It's probably its prime time here. Probably it'll start to look different as the summer heats up and they put the weed killer all over the side of the hill there. But in any event, they were well aware of the issues. The community made them know. They made this part of their walking site visit to see what the issues were, and they were very responsive, especially Kelly Gottschall from Land Studies. She was very enthusiastic about a plan for this that could work. Let me just get to a couple highlights. This is kind of the plan they came up with. You can look at it more in depth on the website, but essentially, just to give you highlights of what you're looking at, this again would be Conestoga Road, this area here, Locust Grove coming in here, and these are the tracks up here for the railway up here. This area would be where the service area for where SEPTA handles a lot of their trucks and moves all that. So moving from this access road or slot here, if you want to call it, all the way down, what they really envision is doing three major things. One is creating a swale area to handle that runoff that comes off from the top of Garrett Hill and the Rosemont Business Campus from there. One of the issues is that because of the topography and some of the buildup that's happened on the side of the road, the water apparently actually crosses Conestoga Road a couple of times before it makes its way all the way to the bottom, which is tough on traffic and tough on the residents and tough all over. If they were able to officially mark out and kind of maintain a real workable swale for that water, then that'll control it and contain it all the way down to the bottom of that hill. That's one feature of it. The second feature is on the backside where a lot of those weeds grow, is they want to be able to, at some point, turn that into what they call a warm season grass meadow / management zone. And what they're really saying is that they just want to be able to plant their kinds of grasses on there. And that may take several seasons to do that, to eliminate the weeds, get rid of those, but put grasses in there that look good, don't have to be mowed, and will actually take over the area, and they'll be the ones that are handling that area rather than the weeds that they see. The other part is that they want to be able to use certain areas to kind of have seasonal plantings of seasonal interest that look good in the winter, look a little different in the summer when they come out, but to put some interest and variety in here and take advantage of that natural wetland that'll happening. And the last is to create an area where they can actually have lawn that they would be mowed, to create a sense of definition that this is on purpose, this is not just a side of the road kind of a situation. So I think she's put together a great plan to be able to make it look managed, look good, look low maintenance. And even though it will take a number of seasons to actually fully do it, even if they started today, I think they have a good shot to do it. And of course, bringing in a third party like that probably enhances the chances that you can actually bring SEPTA and Penn and who else have got their PICO together to manage those right-of-ways and to get perhaps even some grant money from one or two of them to maintain this area in that name. So that would be kind of neat. Any questions that you got on that one? Nope, good, thanks. Of course, those are going to be part of the same next steps, April 28th, May 12th, right, at the Board of Commissioners meeting. We have a couple more minutes. I just want to show you one other thing while I'm here, and then we can get back to our other thing here, and I'm going to find out how do we do this. I think I do this, and I do that, and there I am, fabulous, okay. Page 29. There we go. All right. I'd like to just quote a couple of slides from a presentation that was made yesterday here at a public meeting, the second public meeting by Simone Collins, who has been retained as a consultant to the Greenways and Open Space Network Subcommittee, which by virtue of, that I'm on by virtue of being part of the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee. They wanted a representation from all the committees throughout the township, so we get to have some representation from Garrett Hill there as well. And I want to give you just a quick snapshot of what they're talking about, because it's very exciting. They're planning together. We have a lot of good open space areas here in Radnor. Of course, Radnor is very built out, so that you don't have a clean slate to go ahead and connect these open spaces. So you have to work a little harder to do that. And what they're doing is taking kind of a survey of all the things that are around here and figure out how can they connect them in a sort of a trail / greenway / even if it has to be a sidewalk or a bike trail kind of a way. And part of the impetus for this is the fact that there already are existing trails in the Delaware, in the Delaware Valley region that we would like to connect to. For example, the Radnor walking trail is one example that actually connects to, or will connect to, this regional trail. And this particular picture here talks about the region area. Radnor Township is located in this yellow block here. And these are trails that exist now or are planned to exist in the region, and they connect a lot of townships. And Radnor is in a nice position. You can see where a lot of them kind of cross our path, that we were able to connect with a lot of them as well. All right. The green ones show the major existing parts of the trail. Some of this involves the Schuylkill River Trail. There's a whole lot of others. What's in blue dots is the major planned connecting parts of this trail. Purple ones are already on the books, they're recommended for funding, and the little smaller ones are kind of minor trails that are existing in the region. So Radnor's has a good opportunity to connect to these trails outside of ourselves, and also connect the parks and the open spaces that are in the network that are already within our township borders. So let's take a look at what that is about. I want to go to page 39. Can apologize for missing some of this, but I'm giving you highlights. You can also find this presentation on the web, and I'll show you how later on. And I got to do, oh, here it is. There we go. This is existing, this picture here shows existing areas where we have open space and parks, township parks, Radnor School District parcels, other institutional parcels, golf courses, homeowners associations and PennDOT lands, conservation easements, commercial, retail destinations, and employment centers. So the green ones here are the parks. You can see these are Enke Park and Let me see down here, Garrett Hill, here's Clement Grove Park and where that locates. There's Elmland Tunnel Field right there, and park right there. So these green parts of the parks within Radnor's borders. The institutional parcels happen to be in blue. You have the colleges and universities and other areas. The major pink ones here happen to be the conservation easements. And this larger purple one down here is the National Land Trust easements that are over here and over this area here. And you can see where they fit in with Garrett Hill, St. David's, Wayne, Stratford, and the corporate and financial centers where people live, work, and shop. So these are pretty close together. They're not organized, connected in any particular way. And so the part of what this study is to do is to say, how can we connect these things in a way that people can get from one to the other via walking, by biking, or any other means like that. And you can start anywhere and end up anywhere if you're connected that way. This is what they refer to as a multi-generational project. If they did everything that they had to do on a plan, it would take a number of generations to do it. This is not a 5 or 10-year plan. This is a 25-year plan or a 30-year plan, even beyond that. But it starts with having a plan. It starts with having a plan that's publicly posted so that people know that that's what you want to do, so that if an opportunity comes up, they can say, hey, I can make that happen, make that piece of that happen. And of course, you also set up with priorities on what you want to do next, or first rather, and actually make some of the bigger pieces or the low-hanging fruit happen as well. So that's what they're planning out to do. Of course, here's the picture of the Radnor Trail. That's the one that we're probably most familiar with. But they want to be able to do a whole bunch of things in terms of the trail that has to do with hiking or walking, the multi-use trails. Maybe it's a bike on the road biking area, whether they have a bike lane or just designated that this is an area that's going to connect one park to the other or one part of the open space to another, and it's a safe route that you can take on a bike. Part of the things that they're looking at is to find out where choke points might be, where you have a problem in a certain area trying to get underneath a bridge or a certain roadway that may not be very wide, and they are looking at ways to still utilize that, perhaps by expanding a sidewalk or expanding the roadway and a shoulder to include a bike trail, and looking for opportunities to make that happen where they would show up. This all gets down to, let's see here. That's that. Here I can see on the website here, they have pictures of certain these areas and to show you how they might achieve some of this network, especially when they run into problems like under this bridge here on Lancaster Avenue, how they might deal with those kind of situations. What's been interesting too is finding out all the little hidden gems in Radnor, where all these tracks are that we keep talking about and hearing about in the Board of Commissioners meetings, but nobody knows where they are. And here's the Young track and the Chew track. They're over there by Archbishop Carroll and Villanova. You can see where they are and how they may actually play into some of this.
Who owns those tracks? Is that just
The Township.
Township does?
I'm trying to get to a certain page here. If I don't get there soon, I'll just jump to it. Oh, here we go. This page here just shows some of the priorities that they want to be able to do, the tracks. I'm not going to go into detail, but you can see that they do loop around and connect a lot of the properties and the parks that are within the township, and they want to connect them to where people are, where the businesses are, where the people shop, so that people are connected to these things and can actually utilize them. When they're all done, and this is one of their draft finals, I mean, they still have some work to do, but right now they're looking at a possibility of off-road trails of 9.5 miles within Radnor Township. So that's quite a substantial amount. And on the road, where you're able to combine that kind of road usage to end up with 17.5 miles. And this doesn't even include anything in Ardrossan that would probably add to those totals should that be fully developed with a trail as well. So it's a very ambitious project. It's kind of neat and exciting to see it connect. And where I want to get to this one is to say that there's an online citizen survey for Radnor Township residents where they would like you to go to the website and fill this out. Take you about 5 minutes to do it. There's about maybe, I forget how many questions there are, 18 questions survey. And it's on the website. If you want to write all this down, you can get to this spot here, but essentially, if you go to the Radnor website and go to Parks and Rec, and then Parks and Facilities, you'll see the open space. And in that spot there, you're talking about the gateway, the greenways and open space network, and there's a survey there that you'll be able to take. I think even if you just wrote into search that you find out the open space greenways survey, you probably go right to it. And right now, it has a number of people it has a fair number of people who've already taken the survey. They've gotten some good information from it. It's going to be open for the next 2 months because the project isn't over yet. So it's an opportunity for people, Garrett Hill, that are watching this particular program, encourage them to go in there and vote and give their opinions about how they use these parks, because that would be instrumental in saying which parks are more important than others or how people use them. It's good information that they can go ahead and use, and we should be represented in that as well. All right. Let's see. This is their project timeline, and their next steps include 2 things that I encourage people to come to. One happens to be that that May 12th Board of Commissioners meeting, where they're tentatively scheduled now to do a presentation about this to the Board of Commissioners. That's the same night that they were talking about Clem-Macron, so that would be a double bonus to come to that meeting. And also on June 3rd, they're having their 3rd public meeting where they're going to present a draft final proposal of what these open network and plans would be. So that would be good to get public feedback. We had a public feedback last night, and this will be more give a response to their final plan. So that's an update on some of the parks and fun things that are happening on open space and gateways and greenways. Any questions on this project? Nope. Great. Thanks. All right, we'll move back up to the front. Thanks. Thank you for your attention on that. I hope I did justice to those 2 presentations. The people who actually made them did a very good job with it. And if anything else, it whetted your appetite to go to the website and see the full presentation there, and especially to come to these meetings that are coming up in April and May that are so important for the Board of Commissioners to hear from the public as to their support for these programs. That will go a long way towards making sure these become a reality.
Phil, thanks for your presentation. It was excellent.
Thanks, Jim. I think now, we will have, the Board of Commissioners will be doing some things with this at their next meeting. Hearing is supposedly at 4/28, and we should probably have some sense of a motion or of support that we can bring to that Board of Commissioners meeting. So if someone has to make a motion, I'd entertain at this point.
I'm going to make a motion that we get word out to the commissioners of our support of this project, just to let them know that we're 100% behind it, and try to get them to see it our way.
Okay.
I'd second the motion.
Second motion. All right. Do we have any public discussion about this? That'd be great. Come on up. Thanks, Patty.
Patty Barker, I'm Chair of the Garrett Hill Coalition. Thank you all for your service, and I'm very happy that you made that motion. I wanted to reiterate that the community was very involved in the meetings that were hosted by Kimmel Bagret, Tammy Cohen, and Steve Norsini that were held at the church in January and March, and January, February, and March. They did indeed listen to what the community had to offer. I think the plan did exactly what the community asked for, which was, first and foremost, not to change or lose any of the things we already had at Clem-Macron. I thought they listened to us, and that what the community was asking for was enhancements, improvements, and Phil put it very aptly at last week's Parks and Rec Board meeting. Nothing really has been done to that park for 60 years. So I pointed out to the board that we've been waiting for many years for just a new bathroom, that it's been on the BOC agenda, or on the budget for a number of years, but was put aside for a lot of very valid reasons. So the good news is that the board has allocated I think already $550,000, and then if we get the DCNR grant, that would bring us up to almost 1.5 million. So when the Parks and Rec Board asked, how does the community feel about, do we have to do it all at once? We're going to do it in phases. Those of us who were here last week at the meeting reiterated that ideally the community would like it done at once. We in Garrett Hill are very used to being at the bottom of the list and being the people who have to wait, and phase one will happen, and then what happens to phase two, phase three? That being said, I also reiterated the Garrett Hillians can, we can pull up our bootstraps with the best of them, and if that's what would happen, then so be it. But that ideally we'd like to have it all done at once. So I'm thrilled, and the community members are thrilled that the staff is working to apply for this grant, deadline tomorrow. So I'm hoping that you'll actually send something formally to the board in writing with some letterhead that says that the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee, that you can actually use the wording of your motion. But I think what happens a lot with the Board of Commissioners is they forget about you. They forget about us. And while I think it's wonderful that we all show up on April 28th, and I will certainly encourage the community members to do that, I think it would be important for the GHIC to formally let the board know where you stand. And I guess I could do the same from the Garrett Hill Coalition. Anyway, thank you very much, and it's very exciting, and hopefully this will move through quickly, and we can have new things going on in the park in the next, I don't know, year or so. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Patty.
Phil, I'd like to, as secretary, amend that motion a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Just to support specifically the three elements that have been discussed, renovation and improvement of Macron Park, some treatment of the Conestoga Road's rock slope spillway, however you want to say it, and support for the Greenways and Open Space Initiative, just to include those three phrases. So,
That is the plan.
but it's not one plan, it's three plans.
We want one.
Well, no, there's separate lines of funding. Separate lines of funding, and this is a township-wide initiative. Macron Park is the park, the spillway is, you can't take the spillway plan to Parks and Rec. I don't know, maybe they did, but it doesn't make sense. So,
They did, yeah.
yeah, it's not Parks and Rec, it's whatever. But anyway, I think it's important to affirm that we support all those three parts.
I would second Nancy's motion to amend.
Go ahead, you had public comment?
With all due respect, I think that's very laudable. And I would ask that the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee focus on the Garrett Hill projects first, because these are going to be they're going to happen sooner than the open space greenway plan, which absolutely we all support. But I feel like, at least for the short term, to say you recommend that the board approve the funding of the master plan. I forget what the actual terminology should be. We talked about it last week at Parks and Rec. Recommend approval of the master planning process for Clem Macron Park and the Eastern Gateway, because that's what they are terming it. And you're right, Nancy, they did bring it to Parks and Rec, even though it's not Parks and Rec, because I think the funding for the master plan, what Kimmel Bogret came up with in land studies, that was funded together. So anyway, like I said, while I appreciate that, I think let's focus on Garrett Hill. And I keep saying putting us at the top of the list. And I did thank Parks and Rec and the BOC for that. Well, haven't gotten to the BOC yet, but staff for finally putting us at the top where we deserve to be. Thanks.
If I can work to bridge that just a minute, I know, because I'm a little bit more familiar with the timelines, the Open Space Network and the Greenways and Open Space Networks, that one will come to pass in terms of a final approval needed or whatnot later on in the fall. They still have some public meetings in June and whatnot, and we will meet before the next iteration that really requires any kind of strong support of that, I think. So we could take that action on at our next meeting, for example. And if we wanted to focus on these two pieces that are immediate and are coming up in about 2 weeks for the Board of Commissioners, might I suggest that we draft a motion that asks the Board of Commissioners to strongly support the master plan for Clement Crone Park and the Eastern Gateway, and not only support it, but support full funding for this to the extent that that the township is able. You know,
Was that a motion?
that was a motion.
I second the motion.
Any discussion of that?
No, thanks, Patty, because that's what I feel is the main issue right now, and we have to keep focused on this project and make sure we cover this and push it through and try not to work with the whole phase thing.
I also want to say that the main reason that you guys were asked to continue for another year was because of this project.
Right.
I specifically asked the board to reappoint you, and you all very
I think that's why we all agreed.
kindly.
We knew this is very
We're
important.
all together on
We were
this.
this
Anyway,
close.
And I have said this before, or maybe I haven't, since you've been reappointed, but thank you for your willingness to stay on an additional year, because I asked them to do this without checking with you first. So I appreciate your service.
Thank you. Yes,
Phil, I wanted to, speak generally about the Clement Crone Park
sure.
proposal. Radnor has about, is it 14 or 28 parks? It's a large number of parks. And they're all very nice parks, and they're spread throughout Radnor Township. None of them come close to the detail, to the breadth, to the beauty of what is proposed for Clement Crone Park. And I'm just really impressed with the plan that is going to be presented to the Board of Commissioners. And, of course, the residents of Garrett Hill were going to benefit immensely for having such an incredible park, but there's going to be other benefits. I mean, the other communities in this township that have parks are going to look at Clement Crone, and they're going to see that it's the gold standard, and they're going to hopefully be moving that their parks and their communities be improved the way Clement Crone Park hopefully is going to be improved. Additionally, I mean, with all these trails going through Delaware County or around Delaware County going through Radnor, people, or if they use those trails, they're going to come into Radnor on these trails. They're going to see Clement Crone Park and hopefully some other parks that are improved, and they're going to say, wow, Radnor has a really great park system, and that's going to help, families move in, families to stay, property values to go up. So I see this as an incredible benefit for not only Garrett Hillians, but for everyone in Radnor and, everyone in the area. So I hope the commissioners will move favorably on the proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Those are good comments, and I do bring up something that I failed to mention, which is at the Parks and Rec board meeting, that it was mentioned more than once, that this is not just for Garrett Hill. I mean, think of all the sports teams that play their games there, and during the summertime they have activities for the kids there, recreational activities in the summertime for the township. Of course, a number of the board members kept referring finally to the 4th of July parade, which is not, although it originates and happens and is planned for the people in Garrett Hill and in Rosemont, but it is actually for all the people in the area, for people in Radnor, people in Garrett Hill, and people who come back to Garrett Hill who have moved out of the area and remember that finally. So it's a well-used park. I think there's not a drop of that park that doesn't get used somehow, and this is a nice way to further utilize it in a way that is planned and shows what you can do when you have a good, strong planning. I think that's one of the things they wanted to demonstrate by hiring these consultants to do this kind of planning, even details that I would never pick up, and about how the water's flowing through it and how you get good drainage. And that's important stuff when you're trying to really make this happen. And so and they don't happen free, but you have to be able to plan for them. And if you do, you get strong benefits. And I like your analogy to talk about improving values and improving the township that way too. I think it's a win-win all the way around. So thanks.
One more little thing. It showed when you showed the what the park's going to look like. It didn't really show the access points into the park, but it really didn't show again the crosswalks going across Conestoga Road, which is a very, very important thing. People from Larry's Lane and stuff are trying to get across there. And I was just away. I was just in Florida in this little town, and you had on one side of the street. You had to cross to get to the beach area. And they had these crosswalks in, and they had these lights that you hit this thing and the light came on. And people actually stopped. It was unbelievable. I mean, I thought, at first I wasn't really trusting it, but it does work. I mean, it does make people stop. These bright yellow lights flashed and people crossed. And it was only when you hit that button. So there is ways of doing this, and just to keep the people on that side happy that it is something that's going to be definitely addressed.
Jerry, you mean the lights that blink along the
No, these were
roadway.
lights up
Or up above?
top. At each side had a pole with lights on it, and it flashed.
Mm-hmm.
And the crosswalk was, a little different
textured.
different texture. But I saw plenty of families. The kids were coming, just doing it, and I mean, I guess it hasn't been going on that long because we've been going there for a while. It seems people actually stop. I mean, I was really surprised about it. So
Seems like a simple fix, and they have one in Bryn Mawr, near the
Yeah.
Bryn Mawr Theater, movie theater, and it works. It gets your attention, and they should have one of these. Would be a great idea to have that installed to cross into the park too. I don't know where that money will come from, but that's you.
this is a Radnor alert.
Is that-
Yeah, emergency alert.
Okay, well, we better wrap it up
So
then.
it's an Amber.
Oh, okay,
Amber.
all right, very good. Well, maybe, that's one point we ought to take a note of, and when next time we have a public meeting on this with Kimball Bogret, we should probably pass that information up to say, hey, this needs to be addressed as part of the package too, because, getting safe access to there is one of the things that was on there.
Phil, I remember them trying, when we did the walk through the park, there was two little girls trying to cross, so they did see what was
did,
going
okay,
on.
good.
And maybe that is part of the plan, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I think somebody asked for crosswalks. I think it's not in the Parks and Rec budget because it's a state road.
State road.
Right.
So it has to be added somehow by other resources, but we should keep bringing it up.
Yeah, good. Well, we have a motion on the table, and we've had some discussion of it, so I'll call is there any more public discussion on it? Okay. Any more discussion from the board?
Which motion are we voting on?
Nancy, you want to read it?
Yeah, sure. It's a motion. Sorry, yes, it's a motion to support the projects and
For the
full.
Board of Commissioners, to
To-
encourage the Board of Commissioners to.
Okay, a motion to write a letter of support to the Board of Commissioners to support the projects and their full funding. And these include, according to the master plan for Macron Park and Conestoga Road Rock Slope, or Eastern Gateway.
Right.
Eastern Gateway Rock.
Great.
And that's it. We'll save the greenways for a later date.
I second it.
Good, all right. Okay, good, all right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. That's great. We'll pass that on to the Board of Commissioners, both in writing and also in person. And with that, let me talk about some announcements and get some of these meeting dates. Encourage all of us and all of you out there to attend these. First of all, the next two Garrett Hill Implementation Committee meetings, that's this meeting like this. And you guys write this down, July 15th and October 21st, all right? So that's our next meeting, so clear the deck for that. Then the next coming up is the Radnor Board of Commissioners meeting, April 28th, which right now is scheduled for the Clemmer Park Master Plan presentation. And I'm sure Patty can do a good job getting the word out, should that change, and also to remind us if it holds pat. On May 12th, the Board of Commissioners meeting so far seems to have on their schedule, or at least wanting to be on the schedule, the final approval for the Clemmer Park Master Plan and a presentation about this Greenways and Open Space Network. And there's a public meeting June 3rd. That'll be here in this room for the Greenways and Open Space Network, where they'll present their almost final draft of how and of what the trails that they would like to see happen and plan for, and also a sense of priorities as to what they would work on and make happen first. All right? So mark those dates, and please come on out, because this is important stuff, and frankly, it's very interesting stuff too, and it does affect us all, and it's kind of neat to see it happening, some good parks and recreation things happening. Is there any more business from us that you guys want to bring up? Okay, is there any more public participation? No, none? Seeing none? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.